Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock, what we can expect moving forward, and all that good stuff. So if you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc. Again, I know I do share my thoughts with my members on YouTube. The YouTube membership section down below is the link if you're interested. Every single day, the market is open as is trading, constantly sharing my thoughts, posts, updates. So if you're interested, again, link is below. For just $3 a month, gives you access to the Tesla tier. $5 a month adds NVIDIA to that if you're interested in NVIDIA updates as the market is open and trading. $7 a month USD adds non-NVIDIA, non-Tesla stocks to that as well that I share with my members, usually a few a week. Obviously depends on the market situation. And on the weekend, I do chart requests with members on Discord. So if you're interested, link is below. But jumping into it, NVIDIA with a pretty humble day today, up nice little 0.15%, we'll say on the day, pretty much at 158 per share, looking pretty damn good. But it is approaching major resistance. Doesn't mean the stock is going to be bearish, but I'll go over the ups and the downs, of course, as per usual. So to the upside, right? I think NVIDIA, it still has a potential chance to kind of ease its way slowly but surely closer to like maybe 161, maybe 162, essentially to the top end of this rising daily channel, right? That it started here, nice rejection, nice small rejection here, small rejection here. And again, we're pretty much there once again, right? It's the same situation that you saw in all these instances. Now, it doesn't mean the stock has to just reject and crash. No, of course not. But some level of rejection, or at the very least, a stalling of continued upward momentum is, in my opinion, to be expected, especially as we get closer and closer to pretty much 160-ish, 161-ish, more or less on the dot. Now, that's kind of the upside potential. I do think it's getting a little bit stretched here, right? But, it is what it is. Doesn't mean it's going to crash or anything like that. But again, to make things fully understandable, the stock is undeniably bullish. So again, there's a difference between saying that this is going to turn bearish here versus just saying that maybe not a buyer up here, or maybe to at least take some caution to the further upside, right? Because again, we're approaching a major potential resistance. But again, with that being said, EMAs are still bullish, MACD still bullish, stochastic bullish. Everything's bullish. The stock is undeniably bullish. I think you can't look at this chart and say it's not bullish, but it's important to understand when that bullishness can maybe slow down a bit. And that's kind of what I expect moving forward, potentially sometime this week, even into NVIDIA. Again, as we get closer and closer to 160 roughly, especially as we get closer to 160 roughly. Now, the question, of course, means, but let's say we do get some, pretty serious resistances here. Let's say we do end up getting maybe a rejection. What can we expect to the downside? If there is, of course, going to be downside, which there will be, of course. It's not that things don't only go up. This is what I expect. Let's go to the 4-hour, right? And you can see I already have two things circled because I was talking to my members about this earlier today. But this is kind of what I would roughly expect, right? You can see here, right? When we had this very nice move to the upside, very similar in fashion as well. You can see very nice move, very similar in fashion. If we take a look at the SMI, right? So the two circles. So you can see as we moved up, SMI got into extremely overbought territories, and then it started kind of going sideways for quite some time as the stock then eventually did get a bit of a retrace, right? And this retrace was about a 5% or so retrace. So let's take a look at that, right? SMI, you can see same scenario, stock moved up in similar fashion. So we could get something similar of a movement. So if NVIDIA around this general vicinity also gets about a 5% retracement, I think that'll bring it down to about 150, right? Worst case scenario, in my opinion, 148. So that's kind of what I'll be looking for, right? If NVIDIA follows this exact same pattern that it did back here, especially with the SMI and the way the stock is behaving, which all look very similar, that to me will tell me the fact that if NVIDIA does indeed finally get a rejection from here, the main levels to the downside, I'll be personally looking for the amount of fraud calls and like spam calls I've been getting on my phone, I don't know if you guys get them too, has been through the roof lately, especially in Canada. Anyway, to the downside, the first level I'll watch for is going to be this sort of 152-ish region, which was previous all-time highs. But honestly, I would expect stronger support to come in closer down to about 149, give or take $1. So we'll say 148 to 150, somewhere in that $2 range. I would expect much stronger support, I should say, to come in around this general vicinity. Why? Because you can see if I zoom out back here to the left, there was a lot more touch points and essentially a lot more validation, if you will, of this kind of 149-ish range, right? Over here, even got pretty close here, right? A lot more validation compared to just the two touch points up here for the one kind of 52-ish region or whatever it was, right? So just FYI, that's the level I'll be looking for on NVIDIA to the downside if, of course, it continues to follow this, rough game plan that we had back over here before seemingly, continued upside. So let's see how this actually plays out, right? But this is kind of my sort of, if you will, theory on the stock moving forward. And if I had to kind of, try to look into a crystal ball as to what's next, something along the lines of this move back here coming up for NVIDIA next as well, maybe over the next, week and a half, maybe into end of next week, worst case scenario, but something along the lines of that. You have to remember, this stock really likes to suck premium out of option buyers, right? It's a very, very good stock for selling options on, right? It loves sucking premium, kind of like what it did here for a very long time. It was just sucking dry all the premium from bulls and bears alike. And the stock loves doing these things, right? What do you think it was doing here? Imagine how much premium got sucked out during this whole massive consolidation. So wouldn't surprise me if NVIDIA does another version of that, if you will, around this general vicinity, more premium sucking, if you will. And that's going to be where option sellers will benefit quite a lot, in my opinion, on this stock. So in other words, that's something I'll be watching for, right? Nice little bull flag potentially right here as well, into the EMAs once again, ideally into the 21 EMA, which will probably be somewhere around 149 if it happens, let's say by the end of, probably not this week, probably sometime next week, in my opinion, and then we could potentially get a move higher. Now, of course, let's talk about a more bearish scenario. If things get a little bit more dicey, things get a little bit more concerning, let's say, and we do go below my levels I just mentioned, the final level to the downside I'll be watching for is going to be closer to about this 145, 144-ish range. If, for whatever reason, shit hits the fan, I guess you can say, right? That'll be the level to the downside I'll be watching, which, should more or less actually coincide pretty nicely with the rising daily channel that NVIDIA is still very much in, that we haven't actually revisited the bottom of in quite some time. So that'll be my lowest target I would envision NVIDIA going to, while still maintaining a very, very bullish outlook. Again, the reason I said that is because if we lose this daily rising channel, if we essentially lose 144, and especially if we lose this pivot low down here closer to the 142 region, that'll be very bearish. And to me, that will signal probably a major reversal coming into the stock, which in that case will look something, let's say we get something like this, and then we actually do break down below like this, that would signal to me a deeper correction will be around the corner for NVIDIA, at which point I think down to these levels really wouldn't be much of a shocker. But again, this will take a lot of time. This is not going to happen overnight, and there's a damn good chance this is probably not something that happens until maybe even August, if of course it happens at all. Maybe a nice sell-off as we approach earnings, and then an actual rally into earnings as per usual, like NVIDIA likes to do. So again, this is my more still bullish, but definitely more short-term pain sort of scenario, if that makes sense. But my bullish scenario is that either at this level or probably closer to 148-ish, it finds support and continues to the upside. That's kind of my bullish scenario. So let's see which one plays out. But those are the main levels to watch out for to determine upside and downside. But again, as of right now, I do believe there's a good chance that, closer to 160, the stock is probably going to start finding some serious resistance, get some cool off, and at the very least consolidate sideways, probably down slowly into 148 while keeping that bullish thesis alive. But that's kind of my main perspective, if you will, on the stock moving forward over the next, days, weeks, even months for that very long case I just mentioned, assuming we fall out of the channel. Obviously, if we don't fall out of the channel, but we do revisit it, well, naturally, you just expect it to bounce off the bottom and most likely go back to the opposite end of the spectrum, to the upper end of the channel once again, until proven otherwise, such as visibly falling out of this massive, massive daily rising channel. Obviously, until that happens, we remain bullish on the stock. But if, of course, it happens at some point or another, that's when that deeper correction will begin. So that's pretty simple, right? Not really too much more complicated than that, in my opinion. Let's take a quick look at options flow on NVIDIA, see what's happening. Very mixed flow actually throughout the day. You can see here, nice bullish flow actually to start the day off. But towards the end of the day here, you can see pretty mixed, nothing really one way or the other. You had a nice almost 850K call that came in on NVIDIA when the stock was at 158. Pretty much where it's at right now. 160 strike for next, I think that's this week actually, July 3rd. That is this week, Thursday. Markets close on Friday, don't forget. But there's also a nice 200K almost put that came in as well for 148 strike also for this week. So let's see how those play out. But otherwise, nothing really too much that stands out in the options flow. So let's see. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.